Welcome to Sneakin' into the Movies with Matt and Pat. So today's movie is called Shin Kamen Rider. Patrick, do you know?
Oh, I know. I saw it last week.
Where did you sneak in to see it? Actually, you paid. I paid too.
I saw it in at the Toho Cinemas in Hibiya. I didn't know this, but it was like a wacky Wednesday where like the tickets are half price.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was a pretty full audience, and it was, I would say, half like lonely old otaku lost in the dreams of their childhood, and other half young couples. I don't know, maybe brought in by the hype. It wasn't quite like the Oyaji otaku show like a lot of these other movies we've seen
Well,
recently.
mine, I was actually sitting next to a father and his like little son who I kind of felt bad for because as we'll get into, this isn't really a kids movie. But let's set the stage here. Let's say so we're talking about Shin Kamen Rider. It's the new film by director Anno Hideaki, who you might know from other works such as what, Patrick?
Evangelion, Shin Godzilla.
Love and Pop.
Sure, yeah, he's made lots of live action films. So I think in the West he's best known as one of Japan's greatest anime directors.
Yes, and also the Daikon 3 and 4 opening animations. Like, he's kind of a legend in the otaku world. Shin Godzilla, which came out when, like 5 years back now?
2016, and it also won Best Picture that year at the Japanese Academy Awards. And this is his first film since Shin Godzilla. Although there was Shin Ultraman, he wrote the screenplay for that, and also it was a collaboration with the director Higuchi Shinji. So this is really the first Anno joint we've had since Shin Godzilla.
So Anno has been since 2016 busily kind of rebooting classic Japanese tokusatsu, meaning live action sci-fi franchises in theatrical form. And like Shin Godzilla got a lot of attention because he managed to make a kaiju film that was a kaiju film, but it was also something more. It was like social satire. It was kind of a parody of the Japanese government's mishandling of the Fukushima disaster, right? So like everybody in Japan loved it. Foreign fans, I don't think really got it. If you didn't live here in Japan during that time, it was kind of tough to figure out why this was so, cutting.
I mean, I would describe it as like trying to understand why Doctor Strangelove was so funny and shocking when it came out if you didn't live through the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yeah, no, exactly, right. And then Higuchi Shinji, who is Anno's frequent collaborator on all sorts of things, took the helm for I guess sequel. They're not really directly related, but Shin Ultraman, which is a retelling of the classic Ultra Q and Ultraman series. And that one was great. I liked it a lot. It's not quite as cutting and recontextualized as Shin Godzilla. It was very well done. You liked it, right? I liked it.
Yeah, I think I had some issues with it that are kind of similar to the ones I had with Shin Kamen Rider. But overall, sure, yeah, there's some fun stuff in there.
Which brings us to today, the present era, AD 2023. So Shin Kamen Rider is a reboot or a retelling or whatever you want to call it of a television series called Kamen Rider, Masked Rider, which debuted in 1971, right?
Yeah, indeed.
And it features a guy dressed in an amazing looking costume modeled on a grasshopper, riding a motorcycle and beating the ever living crap out of a bunch of evil terrorist organization clone dudes named Shocker.
This is true. Yes, it was also created by Shotaro Ishinomori and was done at around the same time, developed as a manga. My senpai Tomo Machiyama said basically it was really kind of modeled on Batman. He really saw Kamen Rider as his version of Batman.
Interesting.
Kind of this like dark hero, and Tobei Tachibana as kind of his Alfred. And like the first 10 episodes of the Kamen Rider TV series, they have a lot of horror supernatural elements in it. It becomes more like a crazy kind of like monster of the week action driven show later, but at the beginning there's a lot of scary stuff and a lot of horror.
Kamen Rider was huge in Japan, like absolutely huge, and we never really got it in the States. So I think Saban released some of the later incarnations of it, but I don't think, maybe unless you lived in Hawaii or something like that, you didn't get Kamen Rider. So like I had seen imagery of him, but I'd never seen the show, and I wasn't prepared for just like how popular he was until I came over here and started interacting with like 40 to 50 something year old Japanese adults.
Yeah, out of what they're calling the Shin Japan Heroes, which is kind of like they're trying to create like it's not really like a Marvel universe kind of thing, but they're doing remakes and reboots and a
Yes,
lot of
yes.
merchandising around from these Anno versions of what they're calling the Shin Japan heroes.
The Annoverse? Is that what
The
it's called?
Annoverse, okay, Godzilla, Ultraman, Kamen Rider, and Evangelion. Although I don't really know if I consider the Evangelion unit to be a hero. Doesn't he like destroy the world or something like that?
Yeah, and it's like all this Oedipal complex stuff going on.
But out of all of them, Kamen Rider was the one that's the most obscure. And like I didn't really see any of those original episodes until I was like well into my Tokusatsu fandom, because it was hard to get a hold of. Those are the ones you kind of had to pay like the big money to get the bootlegs or the DVDs of.
So to set the stage here, like culturally speaking, like there was a kind of tug of war starting in the 1960s between anime and live action for like competing for kids' attention. And like there was a lot of discussion in the kids' entertainment industry whether anime or live action stuff was the quote unquote right way to go. And Osamu Tezuka releasing Astro Boy in 1963 injected anime into the mix. That's like the first series called anime. And it was a huge hit. Until that point, everything had been like dudes in suits, puppet dramas, live action stuff, kamishibai type things maybe, but no anime. So Astro Boy comes in 63. It's huge. Everybody's like, okay, anime won this. But then in 66 comes Ultraman. And Ultraman is just like massively popular. And so then everybody's like, well, I guess we were wrong about anime. Like live action's the thing. And then Ultraman peters out after a year or so, after this like huge kaiju boom that's going on, 66, 67. And in its place comes in all of this Gekiga influenced sports stuff. Ashita no Joe, Kyoji no Hoshi, and
Yeah.
most importantly for our purposes, and this is where I'm going to kind of differ with Machiyama's take on this. I have heard that Kamen Rider's direct influence isn't Batman, although it could potentially be in there, but it's actually another series called Tiger Mask. Tiger Mask is a series by Ikki Kajiwara, who's the same guy who wrote Tomorrow's Joe. And it's a pro wrestling series about this dude who wears a tiger mask. Am I right? Am I
Fighting evil foreigners, right? A lot of like wacky stereotypical villains.
Exactly. And so that was a huge hit, both mainly as a manga, but also as an anime too later on. Anyway, I have heard from anime industry people here in Japan who may be biased that Kamen Rider took a huge page from that. It's like a kind of it's mainly influenced by Tiger Mask. And so 1971 rolls around and then Kamen Rider takes the kind of pole position back for live action and like is just absolutely huge. Sweeps the kids. Nobody wants anime anymore because everything's faddish. And so for all of 1971, it's Kamen Rider. Actually, Popey, the company who went on to make all the Chogokin toys and stuff like that, their very first product was Kamen Rider's Cyclone bike.
Yeah, the big thing about Kamen Rider is that like previously popular kids characters in like the live action genre, like Ultraman or Godzilla, were giant. And Kamen Rider's just, he's just like he's a human-sized dude with like a cool motorcycle. So he's kind of also setting the stage for the Sentai Task Force teams, which Ishinomori also created and would become a huge thing a few years after Kamen Rider.
When he injected the phrase henshin into the Japanese lexicon, which means like transformation, because that was his thing, he would do this elaborate kind of dance, as the wind filled the little windmill on his pants. This is starting to sound like an allusion to something else.
On his henshin belt, baby.
His henshin belt. Yes, he wears this. So there's this guy that the hero goes around wearing this thing, looks like a pro wrestler's belt all the time. And then when he jumps off a building, like the wind energizes the like a little kind of a fan in it, and he transforms.
The beanie, when he like the propeller on the beanie.
But okay, so Kamen Rider, we're going to get back to this, but Kamen Rider is huge, 1971, and then what happens? 1972, bam, it goes back to anime with Go Nagai. He does Devilman, which is widely considered to be an anime, if not ripoff, like strongly inspired by Kamen Rider, featuring a kind of dark loner who takes the power of evil and turns it against the evildoers to fight for justice. So Kamen Rider is a really influential, and like it's also like a kind of a product of its time. You have this dude fighting this giant evil organization that in the original is kind of hinted to be Nazi remnants, I believe.
Yeah, shockers, Nazi remnants, definitely.
Nazi remnants, and like in later, like they make it explicit, like in later Kamen Rider sequels, there's like characters like Starfish Hitler and like all of these like crazy crazy, like running around with swastikas and like on them and getting their asses kicked by Kamen Riders. So it's not even like really an illusion. It's kind of a direct thing.
Yeah, I mean, I see some people on Twitter like getting all riled up about like the supposed Nazi influence in Kamen Rider. The thing is, the Nazis are the bad guys in
Right.
Kamen Rider. Like,
Exactly. Well, this is like getting angry at like, I don't know, Indiana Jones for having a Nazi influence. Like he punches Nazis, like he fights them. It's not like it's pro-Nazi. So like, anyway, so we have Kamen Rider, and I think we've kind of set up why somebody might be interested in redoing this. And Anno Hideaki is a known like super hardcore Kamen Rider fan. People have been like kind of whispering for years, what if Anno remade Kamen Rider? And then that crazy guy, he did it. So here we are, up in the current day. You and I are in our separate theaters watching it. Boom.
the lights go down, the music comes up.
The popcorn box comes out. And what did you think? What did you think?
2 hours later, I'm going to quote the great Leonard Maltin here. There are some things I liked about this movie and some things I didn't.
Way to go, Patrick.
First of all, the action is insane and awesome. Actually, they put the first 2 minutes of the movie up on YouTube so people can watch it. And like people are describing it kind of like Ryuhei Kitamura's Versus, like real visceral, like Kamen
Yes.
Rider Panshin. And the crowd comes rushing, the blood comes gushing when the action happens.
He's literally like punching his fist through people's heads. I mean, it makes sense. He's supposed to be this super powered hero. And you don't, of course, in 1971, they wouldn't show anything like this in a kid's show. He's just basically like slapping people around. It's like a pro wrestling thing. And one of the things I really liked about this film was it set up how like brutal the fights are between Kamen Rider and the Shocker guys. Like I was shocked by the amount of blood, as you put it. But yeah, so it is a talky film, though. And by the way, I think we should state for the record, there's not going to be any spoilers in this. We're not going to spoil anything. We're talking about big picture stuff.
Just general impressions, sure. And I mean, I've been watching like Picard season 3, and I know like all the people who saw it before, like, I know something I won't tell. I know something I won't tell. And I hate that. So we're going to try to avoid any spoilers here and just give general impressions. I also really liked the style of the film. I thought like something like Shin Ultraman tried so hard to ape the original series down to like the camera angles and stuff that it was just kind of like, like a wax museum or something. Like it was like a cover band. But this one had a little more kind of variety to the kind of the visuals, and it wasn't just doing shot for shot remake, although there are some shot for shot remakes of certain kind of classic Kamen Rider sequences. But there's also a lot of stuff that really reminded me of Evangelion. There's some kind of imagery that really harkens back to kind of that, kind of seal kind of feel of Evangelion.
Well, that's actually the big thing that I've been hearing from Japanese fans about it, is there's a kind of Evangelion-esque feel to, like, he's a more reluctant Kamen Rider. We won't get into the details of that, but he's not somebody who kind of like goes into this wholeheartedly, like full throttle. So, as one would say for a rider. So there's definitely that.
Yeah, well, Shin Godzilla is kind of like a docudrama, and this is more like a character-driven kind of thing that does do these detours into the characters' inner lives, which is like very Evangelion and very talky. I don't think it's very. You watch the original Kamen Rider, and they're talking a lot, Kamen Rider and the Kaijin, or have a lot of back and forth in their battles. So I wasn't like, damn, this movie's really talky. This is
right.
I wasn't really getting that at all, but there is a start-stop kind of momentum to the film because it's so, like Shin Ultraman, it's monster of the week. Every 20 minutes there's a new monster, and then they deal with that, and then it's time for the next classic monster to come on stage. And then 20 minutes later it's time for the next monster to come on stage. And you kind of start looking at your watch a little bit, going like, okay, where it doesn't really have like a classic 3-act structure.
No. And yeah, you're exactly right. And that's that the problem. These things probably would have been better as miniseries, but I just don't think they have the money to do that, as we can also see. Because my other issue, this Shin Kamen Rider CG, I was really worried about it at first, because I had heard from some people at Bandai, actually, I believe, who said actually there's a lot of CG used in the fights. And one of the things about the original Kamen Rider is that it's all physical acting. There's no, I mean, it's 1971. Of course, there's not going to be CG, but like there's very little in the way of even optical effects. It's like dudes on hidden trampolines, jumping, flipping, kicking, punching, to the point where the original actor, Fujioka Hiroshi, who played Kamen Rider 1971, injured himself so grievously during the first season that they had to introduce like a second rider midway through season 1, while his 2 broken legs healed in the hospital. And, like, it was brutal for action stars in Japan back in the 70s, and like Kamen Rider most of all, because he's just like much more dynamic. Yeah, much more so than Ultraman's kind of karate chopping and like doing judo throws. Like Kamen Rider is like literally bouncing off walls and like throwing him off heights to like land.
Yeah, I mean, you watch that original show, and they're doing some crazy stuff, like fighting on drawbridges, like 300 feet above the ground, or like hanging from like little gondolas, like little
Yeah.
sky gondolas and stuff. Like even now, some of those stunts look really scary and dangerous.
And there's a couple scenes in Shin Kamen Rider where they use the CG to like speed him up and stuff, and I was expecting to find it really laughable, but it worked. It worked because they only used the CG to augment what was like kind of starting out as a physical fight scene, so that was good.
Yeah, there's something about tokusatsu filmmaking where it can kind of be in a place where it's very influenced by manga and anime, where it's not really about realism, and like they will do things like jump cuts, or like it's like reading manga. It's like a live action translation of that. And this film really, really does that. Even if like compared to like what you see in like a Western, like a Marvel movie, for example, like this, some of the stuff is just so wacky.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like would be laugh inducing to someone who's just come out of like, even like Ant-Man and the Wasp or something like that.
The budgets for this and like Shin Ultraman are just so, they must be so tiny compared to even like an indie Hollywood film. I mean, I was kind of, to be brutally honest, turned off by the CG in Shin Ultraman, especially at like what's supposed to be this like giant climactic battle at the end that literally felt like a Final Fantasy VII like fight on screen. Like it looked like that polygon kind of based thing. And Shin Kamen Rider, I think, does a better job of integrating the kind of CG into it. But like the problem is, and this was my issue, it felt a lot to me like those 90s direct-to-video tokusatsu productions like Hokkaido or Zeiram, or like, what is it, Mirai Ninja? Remember that? Is it Keita
Oh,
Hamamiya?
sure. Yeah,
So
but I mean,
I
that's
love
not
those.
a bad thing. I think a lot of the appeal of tokusatsu is often just going for the shot. Even if it doesn't look realistic, even if it's not perfect, you just go for it. Otherwise,
Yes.
and that's kind of where the thrill comes, is like the filmmaker just, taking the ball and like running with it. And that's one
Right.
thing Anno does. And the film that actually reminded me the most of was Anno's Cutie Honey movie. Did you ever see that?
I've only seen the fight scenes. Yes, but yes.
And that's really wacky. And he's going for something that's kind of a live action anime manga hybrid. And it's very unique. There's really no one else who makes movies like that. And Shin
No.
Kamen Rider is much closer to that.
Your name! I demand it!
Pay attention, Panther Claw! One moment I can be a motorcycle racer. The next, a police officer from Kisarasu. I might even be a Panther Claw minion, or a body double for Dr. Uzuki. But if it's my true identity you want, it's Cutie Honey! The warrior of love!
Cutie Honey is on YouTube, and I think people should take a look at it and grimace in pain a little, because some of it's just unacceptable. Like it's just
outrageous and disgusting. Is he going to have to apologize to the governor?
It is kind of like that, but he has an aesthetic. And I think in Shin Godzilla, he was doing docudrama, and Anno hasn't made a real wacky tokusatsu movie in a while, and this is kind of it. So for good and for bad.
I would say that this is, and I don't mean this as like damning it with faint praise, because I like all three of these films. This was my least favorite of the three, but I'm very glad that he made it. Like, he was the absolute right guy to make this. Like, Anno is somebody who has probably thought more about Kamen Rider than any other human being on the planet. And like like he approached this with like a huge amount of respect and a huge amount of love, but maybe a little too much respect, because one of the things that I like so much about Shin Godzilla and Shin Ultraman is that they recontextualized these characters and these situations for modern times. As we said, Shin Godzilla is all about the Fukushima disaster. Shin Gojira is, in a big way, about kind of like the bureaucracy of Japan and like how like poorly governed, Japan is, or how Japanese feel they're governed. This is just a straight up homage to the 1970s. Actually, the Kamen Rider comic book. It's kind of a retelling of Ishinomori Shotaro's original graphic novel that he penned to kind of accompany the TV series. So it goes in a very different direction. If you do happen to be familiar with the Kamen Rider 1971 series, this goes in a kind of different direction that more closely parallels the comic book. It kind of reminds me a little bit of, and people are going to hate me for saying this, but like the the Zack Snyder Watchmen movie, where it's just so worshipful of the original content that the director is afraid to kind of innovate a little. So that was my one like criticism of it, but it's still a cool film. It's definitely worth going to see.
Yeah, I mean, the difference is like Shocker. Shocker itself is really different than it is in the original
Yes.
series, right? And I don't know how far you want to get into that to avoid spoilers, but there are some kind of like threads of Evangelion in there. Some people are drawing parallels to like modern day religious cults like Happy Science or like Shinrikyo. And some of that's in there. And that to me was kind of the what it brought to the table in terms of like,
Right.
you know, what else can we do with Kamen Rider that hasn't been done before. But in the meantime, in the background, there's like all the settings and stuff. I was really kind of happy to see him shooting in like these classically cheap Kamen Rider locations, like shipyards, oil refineries.
Yes, yeah, totally. Like a dam, like these just basic, you know, kind of, oh, where can we afford to shoot? You know, they didn't have the gravel quarry. I was hoping they would have the gravel quarry because that's like every single tokusatsu has like huge stretches set because they can set off the pyrotechnics there. But now with CG, you can do pyrotechnics anywhere.
It was just kind of cool to see a Japanese movie like literally go there, go
Yes.
to like the dirty part of town across from the tracks, or, you know, go into the mountains.
There's very little set in cities, is there? Like there's, I don't like, none of it's actually set in Tokyo. Like it's all shots of, you know, Kamen Rider on his bike going off in the sunset, like off in the countryside, or in the suburbs or something like that. I mean, there are a couple scenes that of course are in like kind of, you know, urban cityfied environments, but it's not a Tokyo movie. You know, like Shin Gojira is a Tokyo movie. Shin Ultraman's a Tokyo movie. This is not. It's more of a, you know, a country western.
It's more of like an Easy Rider trek, you know, in search of Japan, you know, like you get stoned, you take some LSD with some hookers in, you know, New Orleans and stuff like that.
Get your lawyer friend beaten to death by Hicks. Yes. I was, another thing I was kind of happy about is that I felt like Anno reined in his, I don't even want to call them baser impulses, but Anno's female characters tend to veer between two extremes, one of which is like a out of control dominatrix and the other being like a totally flat affect with no emotions at all whatsoever. And he flirts with these kind of characters in this film, but never goes full Anno, if you know what I mean. Like he did in Shin Godzilla with, what is her name? God, the quote unquote half American, like married to the, what is she? She's like the daughter of the US president. Oh, what is her name? God, and I don't even blame her as an actress. She's actually got quite a bit of range. It was how she was written and directed as the character, but just it makes Shin Godzilla almost unwatchable for me.
In her scenes, yeah, it's like someone playing a bad note over and over and over.
Oh God,
again.
it's so bad. Well, it's him trying to make in Shin Godzilla, that character is him trying to make like Asuka Langley like flesh and blood. It's obvious Anno has a thing for domineering women, and he really likes, you know, the way they look on screen when they're in like, you know, 2D celluloid / you know, anime, but they don't work in real life. They come, it doesn't even come across as fetishistic. It just comes across as shrill and weird.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the performances in the film by all the leads were fine. Like, he didn't pick like traditionally pretty people. Like, usually the Kamen Riders are now kind of like Ikemen pretty boys.
Yeah,
but he
yeah,
got kind of like slightly swarthy, weird looking dudes to be
Yes.
the Kamen Riders this time. So I thought it was kind of cool.
Yeah, no, definitely a throwback to when like you didn't have to be a good looking guy to be like a huge movie star in Japan. I mean, look at the 70s are full of these like really amazing looking actors, you know, whether it's Katsu Shintaro. Like Katsu Shintaro is like nobody's idea of a sexy looking guy. Do you know what I mean? Like, but I love him. I love him in all of his films.
What's been the reaction from people in Japan to the film?
I'm the wrong guy to ask because I'm surrounded by nerds who like live for Shin Kamen Rider, and they all really like this film. But you know, one of the things as a whole, it does not seem to have set the world on fire in the way that Shin Godzilla did, or even Shin Ultraman to an extent. Like Shin Godzilla was a kind of societal happening. People are like, oh shit, Godzilla's back and he's relevant again. I don't know that this film will appeal to anybody who really doesn't already have some knowledge of Kamen Rider.
Yeah, I was going to tell everyone, like, do your homework, watch like the first 9 to 10 episodes of the original series, read the original manga. Otherwise, you will be kind of lost. It's kind of like, it's really like not meant for noobs at all.
That, you know, this is getting back to what we were talking about earlier. Like, they really throw you in the deep end because it's this episodic, you know, they had an entire season to develop these characters and these stories. He only has like an hour and 45 5 minutes here. So the first, like, he tells the story of like Kamen Rider's like creation, like what's happening, and the first battle all take place in the first like 5 minutes. It's like unbelievably compressed. Like Shin Ultraman pulled this trick off with a little bit more finesse, I think. But it's sort of the same thing here, where like the entire world. I mean, Shin Ultraman set up the entire world in like a minute. It was insane how quickly they set it up. And this one, they you know, it's more stately, but they set the whole thing up in the first 5 minutes. So it's a lot to take in at once.
So yeah, so that's Shin Kamen Rider. I mean, of the Shin Japan heroes.
Well, it would be cool to see a movie with all of these characters, like Godzilla, Shin Godzilla, Shin Ultraman, Shin Kamen Rider, and Shin Evangelion, like all in the same film. I think would be awesome.
All like eating shawarma, like after the big battle at the end.
Exactly. I don't think I don't think Anno has the ambition to do that, and B, I just don't think the budget in Japan exists to do that.
Yeah, here's my wacky idea. Make something new, Hideaki Anno.
Yeah.
Why don't you come up with something new? It's been a while, hasn't it?
Maybe you're Shocker, trying to force these old ideas down our throats. I liked it. I really liked it. Go see it. And if you're in Japan, make sure you get the. Do they sell this at your theater? They had this like Kamen Rider Cyclone bike, like big gulp drink holder.
Oh, I didn't see that. No, they had Kamen Rider underpants though.
You weren't. You should have gotten them and worn them on the outside of your pants.
Like Super Giant.
I came so close to buying the Kamen Rider Cyclone. It even comes with like a neck strap, so you can like wear it on your chest.
Like Flavor Flav.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Well, it's like something you'd expect to see like Toy Box DX, participants wearing at like one of our, toy dealing events or something like that. I wasn't Kamen Rider enough to buy it for myself.
Yeah, so hopefully it'll come out in the English-speaking world at some point in the near future, like Shin Ultraman and Shin Godzilla did. I think it's just a matter of time. In the meantime, you can watch the first couple minutes on YouTube. That'll give you a good taste of it. And again, you can check out the original Kamen Rider series. I think it's Shout Factory is streaming them.
Definitely worth seeing. You don't need to, but it would definitely help.
Count Dragon and his legion of mutant marauders seek to enslave Earth. Who will save us? Nest Rider, the powerful and awesome teenage hero from outer space with his incredible battle cycle, the Combat Chopper. And when he transforms into Masked Rider Super Gold, not even the evil Cyclopter can stand in his way for long. Nest Rider from Bandai.